Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of an unexpected podcast. We welcome you back for our 16th episode, which will feature the Rohan list. Today, we will be talking about legendary legions. We will also go over a list, as we always do, and we will talk about an exciting announcement that they made after the Not Throne of Skulls event in the UK for the newest supplement. I'm Rob here in DC. Joining me is our fearless leader, Matt in Boston, and Mick from allegedly London, but we can never be sure. And we hope you brought your riding boots because it's going to be a fun one today. So to start us off, we're going to quickly cover this preview that was done for the Defense of the North supplement, which will be coming out assumedly sometime early next year, based on the fact that we've seen a lot of artwork here in this article. If you want to look at the information yourself, it is on Warhammer Community. The article is called Battle for the Fate of Rovanian with Defense of the North. So what do we have in this book? Well, the setting is, as it would imply, is the northern theater of the War of the Ring. We've already seen a couple previews for this that were very vague, but roughly it's going to focus on the attack of the Easterlings on the kingdoms of Dale and Erebor. And per this article, also something happening in the Woodland realm with Thranduil and Lothlorien when they fight against Dol Guldur. So from a match play perspective, what are we looking at? According to the article, there will be new profiles for heroes and villains that fought for the fate of the North. That's obvious. Some of them we've already seen. We had King Brand and Prince Bard of Dale, and we also had Old Dane and Thorin Stonehelm. This article also brings in two new orc characters that we'll talk about in a second. Updated army lists that incorporate the new profiles. That's pretty standard. 22 narrative play scenarios with a campaign system, 6 legendary legions that allow you to field bespoke armies inspired by the narrative.
Rohan legendary legions. Definitely.
6 Rohan legendary legions.
Yes, because they have to be there. Contractually obligated.
And they don't specifically mention the legendary legions themselves, but I mean, we can kind of infer just from the theme of the book that they're probably going to focus on, Erebor, Dale, the Easterlings, Dol Guldur, Thranduil's Halls, Lothlorien, right? In any variation thereof. So a very exciting supplement. We've also been shown, and some of the lucky attendees of the Not Throne of Skulls event were able to get their hands on 2 of the new orc characters. They are Razgush and Musgur, and they are 2 orcs that, best I can tell, it's kind of like the Gothmog of the North, right? Where it's the orc commander of the forces of Sauron in the north at Dol Guldur, and then some kind of super shaman. So yes, so Razgush is the war leader in the north. We'll call him Notmog. And he has a rule called Bonebreaker. It's a mace. He has a piece of equipment that is a mace with the rule Bonebreaker, which actually turns off the bonuses for elven-made weapons when he's fighting against them, which is very interesting. That's not something we've seen before. It's definitely new. I'm sure that it will come in handy at times, especially when you get in that situation where, both of you strike up in a duel and then the elf player or the elven blade player more specifically has an inherent advantage on winning the roll off there. This is assuming he has strike, but I'm going to go ahead and assume that he has strike. And then the orc shaman Musgur, he says his source of power is shrouded in mystery, and his debilitating sorcery sets him apart from others of his kind. And he has an ability called Power from Death. Whenever Musgur slays an enemy model in combat, he immediately regains a single point of will spent earlier in the battle, which is actually pretty cool if he has a halfway decent combat profile where he can bully troops on the line and constantly replenish himself to keep casting whatever nasty spells he has. And then finally in the article, we get not a true reveal, but a very neat outline of what looks like a very impressive large character model that, based on the profile of the helmets, I'm going to go ahead and guess is for the Easterlings. Many people are speculating that it is the Dragon Emperor, who has the mention earlier in the article as being part of the setting. But, my guess, and based just on the outline, some big, large Easterling centerpiece model that will be very welcome for a list that is very starved of named profiles. So that is our preview that we were given. Well, I mean, if he gives them shield wall, that would be incredible, right? Hopefully he'll give them something and it's not just, 7 dragon cult acolytes on a base. So
yeah, that's right.
But anyway, so that is the preview as it was given. Thoughts, my friends?
Well, I mean, that does explain why the dragon acolytes are so ripped. Is maybe they were just carrying that guy around.
Yeah, they're just carrying him.
This is part of their morning jog routine. You just have to carry him through the pads. Right. So,
so I'm looking forward to that. We'll I've always loved the look of the Easterlings, and I'm excited to get some new Black Dragon models. I really hope they do something that actually entices me to kind of put them on the table.
I'm with you
more often, because I always feel whenever I do an Easterling list that I'm like playing with one hand behind my back. I'm almost I feel like every time I'm playing an Easterling list, I'm going into it and I'm 50 points down. And it
50 more like 150
times.
Yeah.
In all honesty, I don't think it's that bad. I mean, I don't think I'm down 150 points. I do feel like I'm down like 50 points, when I'm playing at 700 to 800 point level. And it'd be nice to not have that feeling.
Yeah.
Playing the Easterlings, because they are a fine looking army.
I'm with you. Easterlings kind of were my first favorite evil army in the game, right? Just aesthetically, they look super cool. And I like the idea of them as just being evil Gondor, but they never play the way I want them to. So hopefully, this new named character, I would assume that the Easterlings would have one of the 6 legendary legions that are going to be in this book as the primary antagonists. But
boy, that would
you can take nothing for granted, I guess.
that would be dead on for GW if like this book came out and the Easterlings have no legendary legion on in it.
So
we don't even care about them enough to give them a legendary legion.
Right.
Well, I guess
Exactly.
if the entire book is about them, then you can give legendary legions to some other factions because they're already getting a book.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
Well, either that or it's going to be a legendary legion that is like the new character and nothing but dragon cult acolytes. Yeah. So it's fun but useless, right? Yeah. But hopefully it is a proper legendary legion that, maybe gives them shield wall, like you mentioned, Matt, or something like that. So,
yeah, exactly.
I'm actually really looking forward to that whole shaman guy, because normally you always have wizards standing at the back and just chilling and always in safety, and it's cool to see a caster who's going to be more combat prone, hopefully, because playing something like Gandalf the White is always more exciting than just keeping a caster at the back, because you tend to send him in and more stuff happens. Or like playing the Witch King with the crown, you always want to send him in at the same time as casting. It just leads to more interesting games.
Well, I mean, part of what makes playing Gandalf the White so exciting is the fact that if you're playing Gandalf the White, the other guy has like 15 more models than you do.
Yeah.
So that also makes it exciting.
Not if they're playing Easterlings.
That's true, unless you're playing Easterlings.
Then they have the same number of models, and you probably outnumber them, and they don't have anything special.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I agree with you. I think I like that it's kind of like a Kardouche type model, except instead of killing your own guys, he's hopefully killing the opponent, which is a nice fun thing. And just, I mean, rules aside, and they'll be what they'll be, but in terms of just models, these could be the 2 best orcs they've ever put out. They are incredible. They are just wonderful sculpts. So
I do like that comparison to Kardouche, though, where like Kardouche kills his own models to power himself up with will, and this guy kills enemy models to power himself up with will. And like Kardouche looks over and goes, "Why didn't I think of that?"
Yes. Maybe we should call him Kardouche the Easterling.
Yeah. Looking back on it, this approach makes so much more sense.
I went to the wrong university in Mordor.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. But very exciting stuff. 6 new legions. Legions are always good to shake up the meta a little bit if they're decent. I'll be excited to see what they get for Erebor in the Third Age, maybe something built around the Old Dane profile, because it needs a little bit of help to be a competitive, viable kind of choice over Young Dane and just Erebor acclaimed in that era. So very exciting book. And by the kind of, summary of the table of contents, so to speak, it looks like it's going to be a pretty thick one. So hopefully there'll be a lot of new profiles that haven't been previewed as well.
Yeah, I'm actually positively surprised after all the Legendary Legions that have been coming out over the last couple of years. There's like more and more of them seen winning tournaments and like doing really well at like top tables and so on. And like I was looking at some stats from like latest GBHL tournaments, and it's like 20, 30, 40% of lists are Legendary Legions, and it's just really cool to see that there's just such a variety of everything.
100%. And I love that Legendary Legions are inherently forcing you to play slightly more narratively. So yeah. I like that all the tables kind of look like something Tolkien might have written, right?
Yeah.
So
that's right. When he wrote about the Vanquishers and the Necromancer and the Invulnerable Wizards.
Yep. That was a very cool chapter of the book.
And then Nazgûl that forced themselves to disappear instead of looking for the ring.
Yeah, as Tolkien's looking at it going, I didn't actually write that, but I really should have.
Would have been a good idea. Anyway, so that is the new book coming out. We have cover art for the book in the article, so that should suggest that it's fairly soon. So hopefully it's something we'll be talking about in the next month or couple months after the holidays, and we will certainly cover a nice comprehensive review of that in its entirety when it's out on this podcast. And with that, Matt, would you like to lead us into the list for the day?
All right. So this is a list from Timmy T9204, which is one of the lesser known Terminator models. And it is a Khazad-dûm list, and it is a Khazad-dûm Lothlorien Yellow Alliance. And
could you put it on the screen?
Oh, could I put it on the screen? Yes, I could. Gee, it's on my screen. Why can't you all see it? All right.
Let me just hack into your computer real quick. Just a moment.
All right. Now we can see it.
Okay.
Or at least now you can see it. I could see it the whole time. Okay, so Warband 1, we have Durin and 18 Hearthguard. Solid choice there. So these are the Hearthguard who are they're basically their strength for Burly. Is that right? Is that how this works out?
Yep. I'm just double checking, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. Yeah.
That is correct. Yes.
All right. So these are our defense 7, strength 4 Burly guys, and they go choppy. And with the next warband is a Dwarf King. So this is a fight 6 2-might model that can call a march. And with him are 2 Vault Warden teams. So they bring the 2 dwarves with the guy with the big giant shield in front and 2 giant spears behind that can really stop up a gap or kind of stop up a monster if they can get into him. And then the third warband is Haldir with heavy armor and elf bow. And he has with him 7 Galadrim warriors with shield and spear, 4 Galadrim warriors with elf bow and spear, 1 Galadrim warrior with shield, spear, and banner, and 1 wood elf warrior with elf bow and wood elf spear, and 2 guards of the Galadrim court. So in the end, it comes out to 800 points, 40 models, 6 bows, 8 might. And he writes, Hearthguard are the most lethal warriors available to Khazad-dûm. Not horribly costed for their stat line, so he wanted to max them out. Then the elves obviously stand behind them to give them a second die and fight 5. Allow them to win more fights. Certainly we'll do that. And they get all their bonuses from having the 2-handed axes. So they get the +1 to wound and the piercing strike. Then we've got, he says he chose Haldir as the allied hero. He thinks he's the cheapest way from the elf factions to get in a bunch of elf spears. And I think he's right about that. I'm not sure there's any better way.
That's correct, yeah.
Haldir to get into this. And he wanted the Dwarf King over the captain for the fight 6, which I think is also the right call. and he was thinking about the King's Champion, but he said a source of march would be necessary for the dwarves, and I think that is probably right. So he's ticked off a lot of the boxes here. He's got good head-to-head fighters, probably amongst the best head-to-head fighters in the Hearthguard. He's got decent amount of shooting. I mean, it's not over the top shooting, but it's enough to bring an enemy with no shooting to him. He's got 5 Wood Elves and Haldir shooting, and I think that's probably I think that is the most that he can get in this list, just because of the way it's broken out. And one of them is a Wood Elf warrior who's a nice ad who can just go and he's got his elven cloak. He can go and run and stand behind one of the backfield objectives and plink from there. That's a good thought. He's got a couple of guards of the Galadrim court in there to give some extra fight 6 where he doesn't have it, and he's got 3 fight 6 heroes to begin with. So this has a decent amount of fight 6 that he can put in there. I mean, I have to say, this may be the first time where I'm going to say I'm not sure what changes I would make to this. I can't think of any. I think it's a good list. Anybody else?
All right, so I think it's a really solid list. This reminds me very much of the good old days when, before Legions of Middle-earth, before the current rules, like basically 5 editions ago, where we would stack up Khazad Guard, then put High Elves behind them, and then fill up the rest of the army with like some cheapos, like hobbits or whatever, and just have as many models as possible just to maximize your bows. So I think from the perspective of just attacking this head on, I think is really solid and really scary. In terms of changes, so Hearthguard themselves, they're 13 points apiece, so that is quite expensive. But the numbers are quite healthy. However, there is another way of getting elves into this list, which may potentially be better if you're willing to either maybe swap a few hard guards for Khazad guards, and if you're maybe willing to drop a couple of models. In that Thranduil's halls also offer Legolas with a similar combination of warriors from that list. So I don't have the numbers exactly here, but you would probably be dropping like maybe 2 or 3 models in order to get Legolas, who's actually significantly better than Haldir at doing various things like sniping of horses, hitting various ringwraiths or Suladans or banners, and like things which otherwise this list doesn't really have any way of dealing with. Like, for example, if I want to remove my opponent's banner, then I would have to basically just head on and try to fight through their lines. And if they wanted to hide the banner, then there's nothing this list can really do. So if you really want to get the elves, then I would personally try to go with Legolas's elves instead of Haldir's elves. You could even drop 1 Vault Warden team to make that change or something along these lines. But other than that, I don't think there's anything heavy that can be changed. To be fair, like there's 3 fight 6 heroes. Durin is obviously solid. Dwarf King is solid. Haldir's fine. Yeah, I like it. I think overall it's very solid, as long as you get to deploy correctly. If you get split all over the place, then in a Maelstrom scenario, if you roll badly, then it's Durin with some slow moving hard guard on his own, and then Haldir gets wrecked by whatever surrounds him. And the Dwarf King with 2 Vault Warden teams also probably doesn't get to fight very long if he goes in the wrong place. Yeah. So that would be my own worry.
I don't think Haldir is getting wrecked. Haldir.
Yeah, no. Like
if it has to, can.
Yeah, he's got like it's a full warband, right? So it's 11, 12, 13, 15. Yeah, okay. Yeah, Haldir's warband is fine, but the Dwarf King's warband is just a little tiny. There's only 5 models. He only has 2 might points, So in any like Maelstrom scenarios, he might suffer, and the Vault Warden teams are not very good when they're on their own. Like if you have them in a right position, they're unbreakable. But if you're able to attack that spear, then you're killing them very easily.
Yeah, I think if you get a Maelstrom with this, I think the first thing you do is you bring Durin on, and you try and bring him on like in a corner. Then you bring Haldir on and try and get him near Durin. You know, if he rolls a 2, then perhaps you say, oh well, we'll see where he ends up. And then you bring the Dwarf King on,
and you burn your might if you
you spend whatever might you need to get him where you need him. But Rob, what do you think?
I think that absolutely everything all of you have said is correct, and I agree with. But I have some bad news. The list is illegal.
Oh no!
Oh no!
Haldir is a hero of fortitude. He is not a hero of valor.
No,
that's
been FAQ'd.
Has it been FAQ'd? Okay.
Yes.
Yes,
Then
he
okay.
is a hero of valor.
I was going to say, unless
FAQ.
it's been FAQ'd, he's a fortitude hero. So as long as that is the case, I agree. I think the only thing I would change is I would probably just drop the spear on the Galathrim warrior with a banner and then upgrade the one Wood Elf warrior to a 3rd guard of the Galathrim court, because I feel like there's no reason not to do that. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I really quite like the list.
I also wouldn't mind 1 or 2 knights, just some sort of mounted things. But
yeah, you could do that. I mean, you'd have to drop Hearthguard, I think, to get there.
You could either do that, or you could drop Vault Warden teams to get some cavalry, but you'd have to shift stuff around.
I'm not sure you drop the Vault Warden teams. I think they're too useful. Whereas
Vault Wardens are cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's not clear to me, you know, what. Yeah, that there's many situations that 18 Hearthguards will be necessary and 16 won't be enough.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, with that said, I think, you know, if you want to just go 18 Hearthguard with Durin, I think that's fine. I do like the Legolas idea.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I mean, aside from the, you know, it's going to cost some additional points, you lose. Oh, no, I guess you don't. Geez, I can't remember.
You don't get access to Guards of Galadriel Court, so you don't get access to pikes.
Yeah, you don't get access to the fight 6. I mean, unless you're going to bring Threadwell along, which you aren't, because he won't.
No, you won't.
And then your elves are mostly, because you want them to have the glaive, which means they aren't going to have a shield, so they're going to be defense 5 rather than defense 6.
Sure.
So there are some trade-offs there, but you know, you do get Legolas instead of Haldir, and that's preferable.
That is an upgrade.
But you know, I think I'd be happy to play it, frankly, either way. I think both.
I mean, I think this is fine, but like Legolas is just such a massive thing in this game. So
yeah, Legolas does kind of add an additional aspect that is otherwise going to be missing from this list.
Yeah.
So
the other thought is, if you wanted to get a little bit spicy with it, is you'd lose the march, unfortunately, but you could also drop the king and his Vault Warden teams and put in like a Gwaihir for almost the same amount of points. So then you could have a big flying beastie in addition to Durin and Haldir in this really killy line.
Ooh, that would be interesting.
But you'd have to find, I think, maybe like 20, 25 points to do that, which is certainly possible to do. But that might be kind of interesting, is to have Gwaihir in here. It gets you more might, it loses you march, but it's another 3rd very like killy hero, right? And it gets you the mobility that you lack.
And it gets you a bird.
It gets you a bird.
You could also possibly change the Dwarf King and to Vault Warden teams for Tauriel if you were taking Legolas already.
Mm-hmm. You could. The Dwarf King and the Vault Warden teams are just the Dwarf King in particular.
They're solid, yeah.
Well,
yeah, it's
I'm 100% certain that Tauriel is not a hero of valor, so you couldn't take Tauriel.
No. I mean,
if you
were already
if you took a Legolas, got it. Yeah.
Yep. So,
yeah. I think it's solid overall.
Yeah, I really like it.
Maybe some cosmetic changes, really.
Yeah.
I would be happy to put that on a table, and I think it would be really, really fun and really good. So the
only thing I'm puzzled about is whether the T9200 204 model was the liquid metal one or not. I can never keep them straight. Oh, well.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a Terminator reference for those who didn't get it.
Yeah. For those who are much younger than us.
Though
Right.
I'm pretty sure it was T1000.
Was it a?
Yeah.
All right. We'll have to look that up and get back.
Yeah,
to
I'm 150% sure it was T1000. Anyway.
Yep.
How is Wolfie doing? Your parents are dead.
I'll be back.
All right. So good job, Timmy. Good to hear from you. Let us know how it goes.
Yep.
All right.
Cool. So we're moving on to the subject of the episode, which is the Legendary Legions of Rohan, which we've counted 6. Is that right?
No, I think there are
16.
There's 6. There's 6.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's unless there's a second one hiding in Gondor at War somewhere.
I haven't looked at Quest of the Ring Bearer, which I assume has none in there, but I don't believe there are.
I mean, the Men of the West Legendary Legion contains Rohan, but I think we can ignore that.
I was going to. I was just going to say that I think
legion.
Technically, but yeah, I think the less said about the Men of the West Legendary Legion, the better. So
I feel like
that.
we could do an entire episode on what's wrong with Men of the West, so I don't think it's worth mentioning. So
yeah, we could do an episode on what's wrong with Men of the West. It's kind of unclear who would listen to it, but we could do it.
Well, hopefully the only person that needs to listen to it is Games Workshop, because please fix that legion. It's awful.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they're not listening.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the most iconic Legion movie moment for the entire series, the whole climax, and it is
Nobody
like the
plays
only.
it.
Yeah, I'm actually taking it to your tournament, Matt, for one of the 5 games, but I would never take it unseriously. So because you claimed that it's that a lot of people play more casually and it's themed, so I can't wait to lose horribly in round 5.
All right, well that will be a thing to see.
And then I'll never take it again.
Yes. Some people may call it going down in flames. You will call it going down in a blaze of glory.
Well, hopefully I actually just suck it up the whole time, so I don't win my first 4 games and then end up against this like monstrous army with Men of the West, right? At 1,000 points.
Well, remember, it's not Swiss paired.
Okay, good. So
yeah,
should be okay.
Yeah. All right. So Mick, do you want to take us through the first and foremost of the Rohan Legendary Legions?
So it's from Gondor at War book, and it's called The Riders of Théoden. It contains Théoden, who is riding an armored horse, carrying his shield and dressed in a heavy armor. Then we have Eomer with armored horse and shield, who can also have a throwing spear. Then we have Dernhelm, Fierwine, Gamling, who can bring his Royal Son of Rohan, Elfhelm, and additionally we have Captains of Rohan on horses, Riders of Rohan, and Rohan Royal Guard. Basically, all of the models in this legion are mounted. The rules for it include Riders of Théoden must always include King Théoden, who is, surprise, surprise, the army's leader. And Dernhelm may be deployed as part of Elfhelm's warband if you wish so. If you do this, Dernhelm will count as an independent hero. The special rules are Ride for Ruin and the World's Ending. So friendly Rohan cavalry models gain +1 strength on a turn in which they charge, which is the standard bonus for Rohan anyway. And then we have the second special rule, Death!
I was wondering if you're going to pronounce it correctly, and you did.
Death!
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 Death! I'm sorry. What was the rule again?
Right now.
But what was the rule again?
Once per game, At the start of any fight phase. So long as he is alive and on the battlefield, Théoden can declare that he is using this ability. Every friendly Rohan hero within 12 inches may declare either a heroic combat or a heroic strike without expending might points to do so. So essentially, what this is if you are playing Rohan and you are not bringing allies, then you are probably playing the Riders of Rohan Legendary Legion. Because all it does really is give you this additional really cool death special rule, which can be really, really good if you have multiple heroes in combat or if you're about to get them into combat. Other than that, it's basically just sort of this is basically Rohan at its finest, charging in and destroying everything on their way. Yeah. What do you guys think?
So the first thing I think is that it would be really great if, we had some editing backup to this podcast, so we could have actually overlaid the music instead of having you sing it as you read the rule. That would have been great. But it's not going to happen.
Keep talking, Matt.
I was just thinking I would listen to an entire episode of you singing, Nick. So
true. But unfortunately, one of the price of putting this podcast out once a week or so is that we don't edit this. So you just get the raw material, and the raw material includes Mick singing. So sorry, guys. So yeah, I mean, this is the Legendary Legion that you see probably like 80% of the time when you see Rohan on the table. And the only downside to this list is not a downside for the person playing it. I think it's a downside kind of for theme. And that's of that 80% of the time that you're seeing the Riders of Théoden and Legendary Legion, probably about 60% of those occasions, it's like the people who designed this list stopped reading the army composition section once they got to Captain of Rohan with horse. So you get like this collection of heroes all riding together across the table. And then somebody calls death, and then they all like charge on, and so they charge in, they kill like 16 figures, and then someone is called death, and then they charge on again, and they kill another 16 figures, and that's the army. Meanwhile, I guess the rest of the like 5,000 guys that made the huge march from Rohan to get here in time for this battle are just politely sitting on top of the hill, clapping. Oh, guys, you got this. We're right behind you morally.
Yeah, for some time there was this whole idea of this Legendary Legion where you had some captains just riding forward with Théoden, and like you had an 800-point list of like 10 captains, and Théoden and Gamling.
Yeah, well,
especially at the time when Gamling was giving might points back to everybody within 3 inches.
Yeah, I think this legion is why they nerfed Gamling, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Back before the Gamling nerf, that was definitely the way to run this legion, because Gamling would suddenly be like generating 8 might points a turn.
It's ridiculous
to fuel this army forward.
Yeah, you were first getting the free heroic combat the first time, and then afterwards you were just getting all the free might.
Yeah, and exactly. Yeah. And it was kind of fun to play because it took all the agonizing out of the decisions about when to spend might or not, because there was only one answer, and that was spend the might
all the time.
Yeah, that's right. Oh,
always spend the might.
I need to spend 2 might to kill this one more warrior. Sure. Oh, I could pass this. I've rolled a 1 on my jump test. Point of might.
Yeah. You started giving your opponent might just to be like, you could use this right now. Here you go.
Yeah, exactly.
So. But also, it was a case where like you had a captain of Rohan who's already strength 4. Give him an axe. He's strength 5. Then he charges in. Gets the bonus +1 strength on charge. He's strength 6, calls a heroic combat, and then burns off all the might anyway.
And if he's close, and if he's within 12 inches of Théoden, then he's fight 5 too, right?
Yes.
So yeah, that was the Théoden and all captains.
So like if you're not fighting purely against an elven list, everything else just loses like 20 models on turn 1, 20 models on turn 2. Game ends.
Yeah, you had these fight 5 strength 6 captains blowing through the enemy. Meanwhile, Elfhelm's sitting in the back going, "Why am I even here?
Like, why did I come?"
Yeah, that's right.
I just picture like the entire like line of riders on the hill just decided to go on strike, and the heroes are like, "Really now? Is this the time? Let's just go."
All right, so enough reminiscing about the good old days before the gambling nerf. I think this. I mean, there was a lot of hue and cry about the gambling nerf, and there was a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth by the Rohan players. And I think at the end of the day, the gambling nerf was
fine.
Yeah. If it wasn't precisely the right call, it was fine. And I think it does transform this list. It provides an incentive to take somebody who isn't a hero in this list, and I think that was a good thing.
That said, though, you're still taking like 5 or 6 heroes. You just now have 20 to 24 riders behind them. So you're still calling lots of death, and you still have tons of heroes. And since there's literally no downside, I don't think you play pure Rohan mounted without taking this Legion. It's really only if you want to take allies, right? Because there's just no reason not to.
Or you get or you've always wanted to do Earl the Young and a bunch of and a bunch of his rabid axe-wielding kids.
But I mean, that said, it's also probably one of the most successful legions because it's both competitive and looks exactly like the movie. So I think that it's a really successful legion in that regard, that you want to play it. It does well in games, but it also captures a scene in the movie that's iconic in a way that's just brilliantly representative. So,
well, it does now. I mean, but before the gambling nerf, what it captured was a scene where, like, half a dozen guys ride down and slaughter the entire orc army by themselves while everybody else watches.
That was the theatrical cut, Matt.
Yeah, that's right.
We all watch the extended now.
Yeah, that's right. I can imagine them watching that on film and Peter Jackson going, this really doesn't work.
we just didn't have the CG budget by the theater release, so we added the writers in post.
Hey, are there a bunch of girls from riding schools that are available that we could tape some beards on and throw in the background? Because we really need some extras here. Yeah. But okay. But yeah, and that's the tactic for this legion is the massive charge, where you go in on the first turn, you charge in with as many heroes as you can and many other guys as you can tagged in with them, and then you call death and you do it all again, and you hope that breaks your opponent. And it probably will. Yeah. So
yeah, it's an awesome list.
Okay.
So
here. I'm going to here's what we'll do.
We need to switch books now.
Yeah, we got to switch books. And we're going to go to, all right, so let's do, the next one is the Defenders of Helm's Deep. And Rob, I'm going to throw this over to you, and I'm going to talk about, I'm going to turn off my screen for just a second. But in the meantime, feel free to go forward with
Well, that is all well and good, because this Legion is another one of those that is so massive that by the time I read off all the options, Matt will be back with us. So the Defenders of Helm's Deep, this is a Legion that represents, shockingly, the scene of the defense of Helm's Deep. And it is a Legion that kind of mixes Rohan, the Three Hunters, and the Lothlorien Elves, which is very cool. So
yeah, this is a very cool Legion.
Yeah, very, very cool. So for army composition, you have Théoden, King of Rohan, with heavy armor, and he's the option of a shield. You have Gamling with the option of his royal standard. Aldor, the Rohan archer, and Haleth, son of Hema, the two plucky civilians that are taken from the caves to fight on the walls. The King's Huntsman, who, if you're ever taking him, this is probably the Legion to do it, but you're never taking him. Captain of Rohan with all of his plethora of options that he can take, except for a horse, because nobody in this Legion can be mounted. Aragorn Strider with armor. Legolas Greenleaf with the option for armor and an elven cloak, Gimli with the option for a cloak, Haldir with heavy armor and a bow and the option for a cloak, and then Galathrim Captain with the option for a bow or a shield. And then you've got Warrior of Rohan, Rohan Royal Guard, and Galathrim Warrior as your troop type options that have all of what they could take in their normal lists except for horses in the case of the Rohan Royal Guard, because nobody gets horses. And actually, no, they can take a banner. So basically, it's the entirety of the foot of the Rohan list with some elves sprinkled in and the 3 hunters, which is very, very cool. For your additional rules, you have to include Théoden, who is always the army leader. Not too surprising there. All models from this legendary legion must have the infantry keyword, which is great, but it's not like you had the option to do it in any other way anyway. And then the Defenders of Helm's Deep Legendary Legion may only have a max of 33% of its models with the Lorien keyword. So basically what it's saying is that, you know, your bow limit is also made up of elves. Yep. For your special rules, you have Fight in Ranks, and this is one that is copied across a couple of the legions and is very exciting. Rohan infantry models with throwing spears can use them as standard spears in addition to their normal use as throwing spears. However, you can't throw a spear in the shooting phase and then use it as a spear in the combat phase. So basically giving Rohan the spear supports that they have never had in the history of the game until now. Give them a volley. Models from this legendary legion armed with either a bow, longbow, or elf bow may increase the range of their type of bow from 24 inches to 30 inches, provided they have not moved that turn, which is really good that you have extra range on your elf bows. And then fall back to the keep. If this force is broken, then warrior models from this force add 1 to their courage value. Additionally, if this force is broken, friendly warrior models may reroll failed courage tests while within 6 inches of Théoden, which is actually not terrible, but it's not really the reason you're taking the Legion. It's just like a nice little benefit on top, because by the time you're broken, first Théoden's going to auto pass for you as a hero of legend, and then you probably have enough heroes to stand fast your army. But it's a nice little bonus that makes Théoden, gives him a little something to bring to the Legion outside of just being compulsory. So that's nice.
There's a cool niche use for it as well. Mm-hmm. If you were to move your guys first before you wanted to move Théoden.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's true. Absolutely. Yeah, so this is also a pretty popular Legion, and I believe that a good amount of people used to bring this to tournaments in the GBHL, correct me if I'm wrong, Mick, and do really well with it as well.
I think as soon as it came out, I think Jay was playing it at the GT just before the pandemic.
I think the big question you have in this Legion traditionally was whether or not you take Aragorn. I think before the gambling nerf, the answer was almost always no. I think after the gambling nerf, there's a bit more of a role for Aragorn. He might not be what you go with, but it's one of the few places where you can get him to fight 7, because as long as he's fighting near the kid, then he gets boosted to fight 7, along with your warriors going up to fight 4 or 5, respectively, depending on if they're warriors or royal guard. I think the elf shooting, both on the warriors with just Galathrim warriors with spears and elf bows with extended range, is fantastic. And just having spear support elves behind your Rohan battle line that themselves have throwing spears is really, really good. I think the fact that you can combine Legolas and Haldir plus all of this shooting and still have, Théoden and like a gambling is really good. And just the amount of throwing spears that you can cram into the list is really scary. So you have some elves that are shooting down range, pulling the enemy towards you, but then when they get there, it's almost like a trap because you've got 20 throwing spears coming at them right afterwards, which is really deadly, and especially in scenarios that reward shooting. I think you ran into that not long ago, right, Mick, where throwing spears just decimated you on Clash by Moonlight. So yeah.
Yes.
I think it is a very cool list. I think it's a very competitive list, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite Legion for Rohan. There's just so many cool tools that it has, and I always like throwing spears. And here it's like you use the throwing spears, but at the same time they are actually useful afterwards, not just the throwing spears. And so that's been always missing in Rohan.
It also
So-
just, it's finally, you can do a Rohan battle line of infantry, which
yeah.
looks impressive as well.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they have throwing spears, but they also still have their axes, so they just get a lot better for it.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, Mick, what's your opinion on the Rohan Royal Guard in this list?
So they can go into fight value 5 if they're near the kid. Also, they can be boosted to fight 5 with the Lothlorien warriors.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it is the sort of list where if you're putting a lot of Lothlorien in there, you don't really have enough points to just be spamming too many guards. So it's a tricky one. It's gonna depend on your composition of your heroes. Like if you're taking Aragorn, you probably want to bring more troops with you. But if you bring someone like Gamling, then you can probably afford the Rohan Guard.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people who like kind of max out the Royal Guard on this, and then they give them throwing spears. I frankly have been somewhat puzzled by that, just because, I mean, one of the prime advantages of this list is the fact that you can take these Galadrim warriors with bow, and they no longer need to be like 1/3. You know, your bows are limited to the 1/3 of the number of elves you have. It's 1/3 the number of figures that you have.
Yeah.
And a Royal Guard with a throwing spear is 12 points, and a Galadrim warrior with a spear and a bow is 12 points. And I always thought that the 30-inch bow on the Galadrim with the guaranteed fight 5 was the better call.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And also, if you're taking basic warriors, then you can have more Galadrim, because basic warrior, even with throwing spear and shield, is 9.
Yeah.
So you get 3 Royal Guards for the price of 4 basic warriors.
Yeah.
I think it's nice to have a few Royal Guards sprinkled in just for the bodyguard, but I wouldn't spam them probably.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, I think that's where I come out. There are, and by the way, there, as you pointed out, Nick, there's a bunch of kind of funky tricks in this list that are probably worth pointing out. One is the ability to take Aragorn and what's his name, Haleth. Haleth, son of Hama, to get Aragorn up to fight 7, and then you've got Aldor, who's a 1 might. He's the guy with the shaky hand that has only hits on 5s, but gets to shoot first and reroll his both his 2 hits and his wounds. And because he's only got 1 point of might, having Haleth and Aldor kind of like standing next to Gamling early on in the game is a useful trick, because you can just use that might point to do, you know, that free might point that Gamling's, because this is not a list that kind of like moves towards its opponent. Typically, this is a list that makes its opponent move toward it, just because of all the shooting that's thrown in there. And you had those, you know, Gamling is not going to be spending, you know, is not going to be using his banner ability to like make sure you get like the guy who can call the heroic move next turn early on in the game, and you can use him just to, you know, with these 1 might heroes, just to turn them into might generators to do extra damage early on.
And if you have Argon as well, then you just then you're just generating countless points of might.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, Gamling, you know, not on the horse is, you know, at 105 points, he's not terribly expensive. Which is one of the neat things about this, is because there are guys that aren't on horses, the leaders are, you know, cheaper than they otherwise would be, and you can like this list has a bunch of kind of like decently priced leaders to go along with its decently priced foot that you can put in there.
Yeah, but then once you start putting all those decently priced leaders, you end up spending like 400 points on your leaders anyway.
Yeah. Well, so that's the thing. You can't take all of the decently priced leaders.
which is also why you probably shouldn't always be spamming the Royal Guard.
Yeah. You do have to. This list can go in a bunch of different directions with its little tricks, and you can't go in every direction at once. You need to like choose 2 or 3 of them, and then that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a fun list to play.
Yeah, I think the only downside is that Théoden on foot is fairly squishy and not particularly useful, so you have to protect him. But if that's your only tax for taking the Legion, there are far worse things out there. So
Yeah.
Although
I will say Théoden is tougher than he looks when he's on foot if he's in the middle of a battle line, right?
And in this list, he's probably behind it, frankly. So.
Yeah, I mean, he may be, you may be committing him against ordinary troops. This is a list that very much wants to have these like one figure holes in its shield wall that you can insert hero of choice, and if there's a big scary hero at the other end of that hole, then you throw in Aragorn. If it's just an ordinary guy, then you throw in Théoden.
Yeah, but it's also one of those lists where if you do have Aragorn, then he's not going to be your leader, and so you don't really care about losing him or throwing him into scary situations.
Yep. I mean, especially since he's fight 7, because he's like the perfect guy.
Yeah.
I mean, that I don't know about you guys, but that's how I typically fight this list. Is I've got this like 2 deep shield wall of like elves and Rohirrim guys on foot that occasionally will have a one infantry figure file open in it, and then I got a bunch of leaders kind of standing behind the line, and I wait for the other guys to charge me because otherwise I'm gonna shoot him. And then I'm like, all right, so which leader do I want to send into this hole?
Absolutely. Yeah, I really like it. I also like just how many options you have for characters. So it's very modular. You can build it really shooty. You can build it a little bit more fighty. You can build a little bit of tech with lots of might generation. It's just really, really cool.
Yep. Lots of stuff to do.
Yeah.
All right. So we talk about the sleeper list of Théodred's Guard.
I love this Legion.
I actually don't think this is necessarily the sleeper list, but and this is a list I confess I have never played. So
I've actually played this one quite a bit, so I can talk about that after. Yeah,
I've never played it or against it.
Okay, well, let's talk about what's in it. So Théodred's Guard, of course, has Théodred, heir of Rohan, and he can take a horse, a shield, or a throwing spears. Well, or throwing spears. With him can be Helm, captain of Rohan. Okay. And Grimbold of Grimslade. So this is where you can insert Grimbold if you want. That is the two-handed axe on foot guy who can give you strength for Rohan. You can also have captains of Rohan. These captains can have horses, and as can Helm. And you have your warrior options are warriors of Rohan, riders of Rohan, Rohan Royal Guard, who can take horses if you like, and Rohan Outriders. So this is, I think, the first appearance of Rohan Outriders in a legendary legion. And additional rules, true to its name, Théodred's Guard force must always include Théodred. That's hardly a surprise, and he must be the leader, which can be a bit complicating given that he has a tendency to ride forth and die. Special rules. Protect the prince. All models in this force gain the Sworn Protector Théodred rule. So that means basically everybody in this list is immune to courage tests unless and until Théodred dies.
That's
Am I right? That's what.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Sworn Protector is, I think, bodyguard, except it's on it chooses the figure for you instead of you getting to choose.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But mechanically, it's bodyguard.
Mechanically, it's bodyguard.
Yeah, it's bodyguard.
Yeah. And the next rule is Riders of Théodred, Captains of Rohan, Riders of Rohan, and Rohan Royal Guard. Treat Théodred as if he were Théoden for the purposes of their Rise Riders of Théoden special rule. So that means that Captains of Rohan, Riders of Rohan, and Rohan Royal Guard, if they are charging into combat, get the 1-up in fight value as long as they're within, I believe it's 12 inches of Théodred. And then this rule also has the fight in ranks rule, which is the same thing we just learned about, where guys on foot with throwing spears can use them as regular spears if they do not throw them in the shooting phase. One thing that is notably absent from this list is
So you're done?
well, yeah, Théoden is absent. But the riders of Rohan are, I don't think you count them out for bow limits here.
Correct.
Right?
Oh, yes.
Correct. Yeah. They are part of the bow limit.
Yes, they are part of the bow limit. So you can't, this is not a list where you can go like all riders of Rohan with this. You could go, like 2/3 mounted royal guard if you wanted to, and 1/3 riders of Rohan. But the riders of Rohan, somebody noticed that they had bows, and the bow collectors came by and said, nope, too many. So I think generally you're going to be doing kind of a mixed foot and mounted list with this. And I mean, again, having never played with or against this, for me at least, the things that jump off the page at me are the protect the prince rule. So this is we are the fearless Rohan army until Théodred dies. The other thing that jumps off the page is that this is one of those lists that revolves around a certain figure. That figure is Théodred, and Théodred, as we discussed in the prior episode, has a tendency to go herring off on his own if left unsupervised and getting himself killed. And I think when that happens, the rest of the list collapses. So anyway, Rob, you said you have played this and played against it. So
yes, so
I
have never played it at an event yet. I've only played it, casually at home. Well, not casually, but competitively at home. And I haven't taken it to an event specifically because the world shut down shortly after this book dropped, right? So I plan to try to take it to more events, but having just played the list, it might be my favorite one because it is the only legendary legion for Rohan that lets you actually play kind of a mixed combined arms army where both the infantry and the cavalry are both necessary and effective, and it's got a lot of flexibility. It also doesn't hurt that I really loved the very lore behind it in the books with the Fords of Eisen and all of that. But I think you are absolutely right that one of the big things that jump out is the army-wide bodyguard, and it's kind of hard to understate how useful never taking courage test is. Now, yes, Théodred himself is pretty squishy if you commit him into kind of bad combats or he gets singled out, or I mean, the biggest fear is always magic, right? So like especially flying magic or something that can kill him without him being able to have a lot of agency in the situation. But because of the way you're usually building the list, which is more of an infantry battle line supported by cavalry, you usually are able to block off lanes both for him and against him and start to kind of commit him into pockets where he can, hit something hard, do a lot of damage, but not be overly threatened. Now, obviously, fog of war and battle plans fall apart as soon as the lines are joined, kind of thing. So if you misplay, that can obviously backfire on you. But I've always played it with more or less a huge infantry line, all with throwing spears, and majority of them are Helmingas, and then about 2/3 Helmingas, 1/3 Royal Guard. And then a contingent of like 2 outriders on horses, and then somewhere between like 5 and 6 on foot with bows, and then all 4 heroes, right? So Théodred, Grimbold, Elf Helm, and a captain. The cavalry are not riders of Rohan; they're always Royal Guard, throwing spears where you can take them, and they kind of go around and follow Théodred around, and they're his little like escort that also happen to be fight 5 on the charge, which is wonderful. But when you have an entire battle line that is fearless, has throwing spears, and has strength 5 when the lines clash, yes, they don't have the highest defense, but that is actually remarkably killy, and especially if you've got the fight 4 Royal Guard behind them that you can throw into fights where they need the higher fight. I've played this against the Dunlending Legendary Legion that should wipe the floor with it and won, just because, the list is frustratingly killy, and with all of the throwing spears there, you only need a few outriders to kind of throw a few arrows down range and pull the enemy towards you a little bit, and then they're in range of all your throwing spears. And because all of your troops are Helmingas, and yes, you can say why not make them regular Rohirrim, but it comes down to math. If you took away the 24 or so Helmingas that you take and turn them into warriors of Rohan, you get like 3 extra guys, which is usually not worth losing strength 4, strength 5 across your army. And yeah, and it's a very flexible list where you have a battle line that can go toe to toe with other battle lines and actually kill stuff. So it's not just your heroes killing things. And then you've got Elfhelm, who's a great kind of utility tool who can't fight other heroes, but with his throwing spear, he can go in and he can kind of muck up other people's horses, or be kind of a bit of a flexible player. Grimbold usually is at the back calling heroic moves, but he also makes a really good bodyguard for like Théodred or the other heroes, because if he can be in a fight where the other hero can win the fight, he's really good at killing stuff, right? So he's just kind of a force multiplier. And then the captain, who can charge in at the fight 5 and still has the axe, is another good utility character, and he also brings March if you needed to bring your battle line up. So I'm not necessarily willing to say that compared to Riders of Théoden or the Defenders of Helm's Deep, it is the most competitive Rohan Legion, but I think it's actually a lot better than a lot of people give it credit, and it's also really fun to play because it's a very different style of Rohan than just I'm all cavalry or I'm all infantry. So yeah, I plan to bring it to an event when I can, and I encourage people to give it a try. So
I have a question. So with the limited number of heroes that you have in it, is it the case that you would only play it at lower points levels, like 500, maybe 600, and it's not really playable at like 800 or 1,000?
I actually think it's playable at 800. It's unplayable at 1,000. So at 800, you get all 4 of the heroes and a pretty good amount of troops. So obviously you start running into things that are scary, but it still has some play. I think at lower level points, it's really, really strong, just because, again, fearless, good troops, kind of flexible heroes that are very cheap but effective, like Théodred. I think a couple people in the GBHL, I think Ali King has been bringing it a lot at lower points and being successful with it.
I think there was a tournament a few months ago, or even the start of this year, like with the pandemic. I don't know which one it might have been, but it was like 450 points or 5. Yeah, it must have been 450. And I'm pretty sure there was the Riders of Théodred that won it.
I know Ali King has taken it a few times, and I think he just won the GBHL, right? So he had to have won with it a couple times. So I think, yes, I think at lower points it's good. I think at lower points it competes with Helm's Legion, which we haven't covered, but is obviously extraordinarily strong. I think at like 700 you can still get all the heroes and a good amount of troops, and that's a kind of a good niche for it. But I've played it at 800, and yes, there are probably lists that will really make it suffer at that points level, but it also has a lot more play. Just like the army-wide bodyguard alone is so strong, right? Because when you run into a lot of the armies that focus on terror, just knowing that you're never going to have to worry about that. And then if you do break, knowing that you're not all going to run, even if that means you have to kind of start hiding Théodred somewhere where he can't get into trouble.
I can imagine like Théodred's staff going, look, guys, whatever we do, we just can't let him charge anything.
Well, at some point,
stand in front of him.
You realize that Théodred is going to do more harm than good, so he voluntarily dismounts so he can't get into trouble, but still gives the 12-inch bubble for +1 fight, right, for all of the cavalry. So like you can hide him behind the battle line if you don't need him to be the primary source of killing. And with, access to fight 4 and strength 5 across your battle line, you don't always need him to be the thing to kill troops, right? Usually heroes are there because they need to kill efficiently, but the Helmingas actually do it pretty well, especially when you can throw on your way in with a throwing spear and then still have a spear support behind you. So you're getting a lot of dice to win the fight. So I think it's a good Legion. Probably not the best, but very playable, very fun, very different to playing other Rohan lists, and I like it quite a bit. So
here's just a quick question regarding Théodred rather than his Legion in particular. If he is mounted and you've got him kind of surrounded by 3 other mounted guys so that he can't charge, if the enemy gets somebody within 6 inches of him and there is a 1 inch wide gap between 2 of those cavalry models, must he then dismount to charge?
I don't know. I've never actually I've never actually played it that way or been in that situation, but that's probably worth checking because
I think the answer to that may be yes.
I think the answer is yes, because it says Théodred must charge an enemy model if he is able to do so. And by dismounting, he would be able to do so.
But can you charge after you dismount?
You can, as long as you have
long as
not
you're
moved
within
more
range.
than 6 inches. Yeah.
So technically, it's anyone within 7 inches because when you dismount, you get an extra inch of movement off of it.
Oh, yeah, fair point.
Yeah.
So, so it might actually be even worse. But
well, and that may mean that the gap may actually be able to be smaller than 1 inch and still have him go out because you're going to end up putting him next to the cavalry model. So
yes, yeah.
I'm not sure if that changes the geometry. I'm sure that changes the geometry somewhat.
That said, and you're not wrong, when you play the Legion enough times and you get used to using Théodred, you get a lot better about making sure that if he's pulled into fights, your opponent's only pulling him into fights he either can win or is at least not going to be a nuisance, right? Like he's fighting like Crebain. And yes, he's not contributing, but he's not dying. And by not dying, he's making your army fearless, right? And that's enough. So,
yep.
But I guess his Royal Guard bodyguard needs to go into a true flying V from now on. No gaps.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I mean, it only matters if the enemy can get somebody within 6 inches of it. Because it's not like, he's going to go herring off 10 inches through that gap, but still.
Yeah, I say if this Legion did not have the fight in ranks rule, I'd say it was total trash, but because it can do the fight in ranks, and it's the only place where you can do that for Helmingas, I think it's actually quite good, and I encourage people to give it a try.
All right. All right, so Mick, I think oh, actually, no, you can't. You don't have the book here.
I don't have the book,
So we're back to Rob for the Riders of Aomer.
For the Riders of Aomer. So everything that I said about the Théodred's Legion, I'm about to unsay about Riders of Aomer. But let us, which I've also played a lot and regret every time. So our Riders of Aomer, this is meant to kind of capture the scene where Aomer and Gandalf arrive at Helm's Deep and relieve the beleaguered defenders and ride down the hill in what is at least one of the top 5 most epic scenes in the movies.
Oh no, that's a rock. That's
no, it's at dawn look to the east to the king. I don't even know if there's music overlaying that, but in any case, so army composition: Aomer, Marshal of the Riddermark on horse. He can take a shield and throwing spears. He cannot take an armored horse. You have Erkenbrand, Captain of Rohan on horse, and Gandalf the White on Shadowfax. Then you can take General Captain of Rohan on horse with all the regular options. And your only troop availability is Riders of Rohan, though they can take everything that they would otherwise have access to. Additional rules: a Riders of Aomer force must include Aomer, Marshal of the Riddermark. Aomer is always the army's leader. Fine. All models in a Riders of Aomer force must be cavalry models, which again is one of those rules that doesn't really have a distinction because it's not like you can take infantry anyway. And then Riders of Rohan within this legendary legion do not come up towards your forces bow limit. So you can take an entire army of riders. In fact, you must. The special rules are: to the king, friendly Rohan cavalry models within 12 inches of Aomer gain +1 strength on a turn in which they charge. So it's just a limited version of the Rohan army bonus, and it's tied to Aomer. And look to the sun. Once per battle, so long as Gandalf is alive and in your force, you can declare that you are using this ability at the start of any friendly move phase. Until the end of the enemy turn, or until the end of the turn, enemy models that are engaged with or supporting a model engaged with any friendly cavalry models that made a charge at that turn suffer a -1 penalty to their duel rolls. So in layman's terms, if you, once per game, you can call this thing, and any of your cavalry that's charged, their enemies at -1 to hit in that subsequent duel roll.
They're all under the effects of the shade.
Yes. So
once a game.
What can I say about this Legion? So I actually really dislike this Legion a lot, and I really want to like it because, again, I think it's a very cool theme, but why? Just why, right? Like when you could just play, just taking this Legion without the Legion rules, you could ally Gandalf the White as a green ally, so you're not losing anything. So the only thing he's getting is the ability to lead riders in this Legion, which you don't need because you'll never have the numbers to go above, what you are getting with Aomer and Erkenbrand. And then you always get +1 strength on the charge without having to be near AM. Now, granted, 12 inches is a pretty like big bubble range, so it should cover most of where the fighting is, but it just seems like a hamstring. He does not count as Théoden for the Arise Riders of Théoden, which if he did, I think would change the equation, because I think then it would be a lot better. And the reason is I've played this army against Isengard, for example, which according to the movie should be their prime enemy. And even with Look to the Sun up, when you charge in, I'm losing more fights than I'm winning to just like basic Uruk fights, because I don't have the fight, right? And if I don't roll the 6, which is not a guarantee on 2 dice, and you don't have any mega banners, so you're only going to be within 3 inches of a banner potentially, then like it doesn't matter if they're at -1, because they're going to win if they roll a 6 and they have more attacks than I do, or at least as many attacks as I do. So I don't feel like you're getting anything, and the trade-off is that you can't have access to any of the good Rohan cavalry like Royal Guard. So that you can like sprinkle in some cavalry that way. And so it's just kind of like a why play this? Why would you choose to play this? Right? I don't love it. Yes, it's cool that you have Gandalf, but the fact that you basically have to take Gandalf to make any use of the rules in this Legion anyway, that's really expensive after you take Gandalf and Éomer, and so you're really going to be hurting for troops. You have no way to mitigate courage, so you probably at some point are taking Erkenbrand too for the Horn and for the March. And at that point, you definitely don't have enough troops. So it's not one that I particularly like. I love it thematically, and I'll play it in casual games, but in games where a reasonable opponent knows what they're doing, I just feel like I'm playing Rohan with, an Easterling hand behind my back kind of thing. So, and maybe you feel differently. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But
I think this special rule, don't you think that this is what Blinding Light should have been? And
yes, absolutely.
This is what Gandalf the White should have had in his rules, as something like cast on a 5, and then the target model and all models within 3 inches of it receive -1 to their duel roll this turn, or something along these lines.
Or he cast it on himself, right?
Yeah, or even on himself,
and then everybody within 3 inches or 6 inches of him gets this bonus.
It's almost like a terrifying aura. Buff, right?
Yeah, I mean, if it was casting on yourself, then you would be affecting probably too much of an army, and like instead of charging in, people charging at you would be getting this negative thing. But like if you were to go pick that figure over there, models within a couple of inches. Get the minus. They get blinded.
Yeah, but that's not how it works, right? I mean, it's not like he cast this and like some orc like burst into a pillar of fire. Right? I mean, it was coming out of his staff, but I mean, it would essentially be.
Yeah, but it was coming in a single direction. It wasn't coming in all directions.
What it would do is it would turn him into a shade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's a spell that you cast, and I don't think, by the way, that you. I don't think this is something that you allow to like be eternal if you were to make that.
Yeah.
But when he on a turn that he casts it, he's basically a shade.
Yeah, and it's like a 240 point shade, which is fair enough.
Yep.
And you cast it on a 5+ or something like that for that turn.
Yep.
Sure. Still wouldn't save this Legion though.
No, it wouldn't. But like you wouldn't have to use pages on this Legion. You would just have it as a cool Blinding Lights rule.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. You nailed it. Is like this Legion doesn't give you anything that makes it worth the pages over just building this out of the Rohan list with allies, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but I have had very little success with it. I've played it against armies that are really good and should beat it. I've played it against armies that it should compete with, and it still didn't feel very good. So it just doesn't draw me back on anything other than a modeling level. The best I can say about it is it's all plastic and fairly cheap to build. So if you're a beginner, buy Pelennor Fields and these 2 plastic boxes, and you have a great army to go with it, I guess. But
yeah, well, I mean, Erkenbrand isn't plastic, but
that's true. But you don't have to run Erkenbrand, and you often don't have the points to do it, because if you're at like 700 points, you can get like 20 riders and the 2 characters, and that's less than that, your right?
Yeah.
If you did 10 riders with Erkenbrand, it's no good, right?
Yeah. Now this one's a fail. I'm not sure there's much more to be said about it, other than to move on.
It's a shame, but it's a fail.
Yep. Okay, so Pass of the Druadan. So for those of you who saw the movies but didn't read the books, you have no idea what this list is. For those of you who read the books, you'll recognize this as on the approach march to the Pelennor Fields. Gon and his friends led Rohan through secret paths to get them there on time and at the appointed place. And this is that list. This was a very curious choice for a legendary legion, given that it has kind of no parallel in the books, but it's here. And it's interesting. This is one that I have played a couple times, and I think this actually may be the sleeper list, at least in some circumstances, which we'll talk about in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
But so you can take for this list Théoden, King of Rohan, on armored horse, and he can take his heavy armor and he can take his shield if you want, and usually you want. You also have Eomer, Marshal of the Rittermark, also on armored horse, and he gets his shield and his throwing spears if you want him to have them. Dernhelm can be with this force, as can Daerwine, Chief of the King's Knights, with horse. Elfhelm can be here with horse. Gamling can be here with horse, along with the Royal Standard. And in addition, you have Gon Bregan, who is the one and only named Woes' leader, who cost you 65 points, and he can be a part of this list. And you can also have captains of Rohan with horse, riders of Rohan, Rohan Royal Guard with horse, Rohan Outriders with horse. So they're the Outriders making another appearance, and Woes' warriors. So your only foot with this list are the Woes. Everything from Rohan has to be on a horse, as they are, trotting their way to Pelennor Fields. That makes sense. And you have the additional rules. A pass of the Druadan force must always include Théoden, King of Rohan, who's always the army's leader. All right, that makes sense. A pass to the path of the Druadan force must always include Gon Bregan and a full warband of Woses. So that means, since Gon Bregan is a hero of valor, 15 Woses. And he is the only hero that can include Woses warriors in his warband. So basically, you're going to have in this list Gon Bregan, 15 Woses, Théoden, and then a bunch of heroes and riders and stuff like that on a horse. And riders of Rohan within this legendary legion does not count toward your force's bow limit. So you can have as many riders as you want, no problem there. The special rules. So let's talk about the special rules, because that's really what this list is all about. The first is waypoints. At the start of the game, before either side is deployed, this legendary legion's controlling player may place 3 25-millimeter waypoint markers anywhere on the board. Whilst within 6 inches of a friendly waypoint marker, friendly Rohan models do not suffer any penalties for moving or charging through difficult terrain. And that is, by the way, any difficult terrain. Next one is Kill Orc-folk. Friendly models may re-roll 1s to wound when making strikes against any Orc, Goblin, or Urkhai model. That's useful to have in the right circumstances, but isn't really the centerpiece of the list. And then know all paths. If during the movement phase, models from both sides have declared a heroic move and roll-off is required to see which side's heroic move happens first, this force will gain a bonus to that roll. They would normally win a roll-off on a 4+. They will instead win on a 3+. They normally win on a 1, 2, or 3. They will instead win on a 1, 2, 3, or 4. So basically, you have a 2 in 3 chance of winning the heroic move roll-off, as opposed to a 1 in 2 chance. And so it's the waypoint special rule and the know all paths special rule that make this list an interesting choice. And the way this list generally is constructed is you have to have your Gon Bregan and your 15 Woses, and then you have a whole bunch of cavalry along with some, you've got Théoden obviously and his cavalry. You're going to have Gamling in here and some cavalry, and then depending on what points you have, because you've got a significant kind of Woses tax that goes with this list, where you have to take Gon Bregan. He's 65 points. You have to take 15 figures of his buddies, which at 9 points a pop is 135 points. So that means that you've got basically 200 points of Woses in this list. So this is not a list you're going to take at small points levels, because otherwise it's going to be Gonbury Gon, 15 Woses, Théoden, and one other guy who's with him, and that's the force going to the Pelennor Fields. This is a high point army, and you need to figure out something useful to do with those 200 points of Woses. Because I don't think we've ever talked about Woses on this podcast, but they're fight 3, defense 3 guys.
Yep.
I'm
And
just gonna have to look it up. I haven't used them in a while.
They used to be great at 7 points apiece. Now they're 9 points apiece, and so this is probably the only time you will ever play them.
Yeah,
they used to be a staple with Wood Elves and Rohan, right? Before,
or with Ents and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But so they're kind of
behind Fountain Guards. They were great.
They have a stock unseen special rule, so they basically have Elven cloaks, but these are, and they come with poison blowpipes, so they have, they can do damage at range, but these are not guys you want to have fighting in a battle line against orcs, because even though they have the hatred rule against the orcs, they go down pretty quickly with their fight 3, defense 3.
God, they're so small I can't even find them in the book.
So this is a legion you want to take if you think there's going to be a whole bunch of terrain on the board. If there's a whole bunch of terrain on the board, all of a sudden your Woses, especially if there's forest, which I think the Woses are woodland creatures, they can run right through.
Yeah.
Or they could, hide. And then the Woses tax is kind of less of a tax because they have a role. The other thing that's useful about this is obviously the waypoints, and the waypoints in conjunction with your cavalry are extremely useful, because all of a sudden your cavalry is running right through that terrain. Your opponent is not. So if you have a big chunk of woods somewhere on the board, you can bring your cavalry up on one side of it, and your cavalry is suddenly in range of your opponent, while your opponent is not in range of you. And that is not a good situation to be in if you are not the cavalry. And so what you can do with your cavalry is you can charge through, you can charge through that terrain, hit your opponent, especially if you're moving second and he ends up near you, you charge through that terrain, you hit your opponent. And if you get the heroic move off, you can charge again if you want, or you could just take all your cavalry and run right back through the terrain and be perfectly safe. From your opponent's cavalry. And you can do all sorts of funky things like that if you have the right amount of terrain where you can send your cavalry through and because what the enemy is going to do to try and deal with you is they're going to kind of split their army to go around the terrain. And even if they send their whole army on one side of the terrain, you just go around the other side of the terrain and then charge through it. But great if you can get them to split their army and go on two sides, because you can send them on one side of the train, kill that half of the army, and then zip through the train and kill the other half of the army. And that's where kind of the real advantage of this list goes, especially with the know all paths. You're probably going to win heroic move offs, is this kind of hit and run through the train, hit your opponent, kill a bunch of them, and then just run away and be gone and be untouchable.
There's the other benefit of any objective-based scenarios. You just walk wherever you want, and your opponent can't really catch you. The main issue with cavalry, especially at high points, if you have a very dense board, there's very few places for you to go through that they can block you through, and here you can just run through it. So it's much harder to actually stop you going through for recon, for any sort of destroy supplies or anything like that. It's harder for your opponent to defend.
Well, and as long as you're playing against orcs, goblins, or urukai, which is a significant portion of the field, your cavalry is killier, right? And so you don't regret losing the +1 strength on the charge as much as you would otherwise. So,
which makes this list even better in good versus evil tournaments, as we'll find out later in this episode. So stay tuned.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and given how many tables I've seen competitively that are very, very cool and thematic and look wonderful with lots of terrain, but are a nightmare to play on, especially for a cavalry army. The waypoints are just a godsend for that. So,
yes, they are. But you're not going to be playing this list at low points because the last thing you want is 200 points of Woses and 100 points of Théoden and 100 points of troops that can actually kill something. But yeah, it is a lot of fun to play with on the right board at the right points level.
Well, and the elf blade for heroic moves is a super cool ability. I like that a lot.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
All righty. So I think as Mick has hinted at, instead of doing our own list for this, we're going to go over some other people's lists because
I think we have one more Legion.
We have another Legion. Oh my! I forgot.
And I actually think we didn't. I don't think we covered Helm during the heroes just because we were saving it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So go ahead, by all means.
You want me to do it?
Yeah, go ahead. It's your turn.
All right. So I will cover Helm Hammerhand, and then you can talk about his Legion. So Helm Hammerhand. He is a 165-point hero of legend, isn't he ever? He has a fairly monstrous stat line. Fight 5, shoot 4, strength 5, defense 7, 3 attacks, 3 wounds, courage 6. He has heavy armor, a 2-handed sword, and the horn of the Hammerhand. The horn of the Hammerhand is a war horn, and on a turn in which he charges into combat, makes him cause terror. His heroic actions are resolve, strike, strength, defense, and challenge. So 3 very useful ones, or at least 2 very useful ones, 1 somewhat useful one, and 2 not so useful ones. And he can take a horse as an option. His special rules are Burly, Expert Rider, and Horse Lord, because he is still a Lord of the Rohirrim. He has the Inspiring Presence rule, which is passive. Friendly Rohan warrior models within 6 inches of Helm Hammerhand add a bonus of +1 to their fight value. So he is a walking Minas Tirith flag. And the Hammerhand. The Helm Hammerhand may choose to fight with his fists instead of his sword, in which case he may use the Bash special strike. Additionally, Helm Hammerhand can never count as unarmed. So eat your heart out, Shatter. He may be taken as part of the Rohan army list, but if your force contains Helm Hammerhand, it may not include any other named hero models from the Rohan army list. Also, if your army includes Helm Hammerhand, then every alliance will be impossible allies, which is all completely irrelevant because you're never taking him outside of his Legion where he gets even better. So he's already pretty darn good with strength 5 and a 2-handed sword and burly, access to a horse, +1 fight for models within 6 inches of him, and all of the right heroics plus causing terror on the charge. But in his Legion, take it away, Matt.
All right. So you've heard of Théodred's Guard. Now we have Helm's Guard. And as you might expect, Helm's Guard allows Helm Hammerhand, who can take a horse for 10 additional points. You can have Captains of Rohan with all their bells and whistles. You can have a King's Huntsman. Don't bother. You can have Warriors of Rohan, Riders of Rohan, Rohan Royal Guard, and Rohan Outriders. And not surprisingly, the additional rule is it must contain Helm Hammerhand, and he is always the army leader. So the special rules. Defend the Southburg. So defend the Southburg is essentially the same as the fight in ranks rule. In fact, it is the same as the fight in ranks rule. It just has a different name. So the guys with throwing spears on foot can use them as spears from the second rank. And then the second special rule, King of Rohan. Helm Hammerhand gains the Mighty Hero special rule. So yes, he becomes Aragorn. He gets a free point of might a turn. Additionally, Helm Hammerhand may declare heroic combat each turn without spending might.
Elendil.
Yes.
On top of being Aragorn.
Yes. So this would be if
literally, who's your daddy, you two?
Yeah, that's right. This is Elendil and Aragorn had a baby, and that baby was Helm Hammerhand.
Well, it's Elendil and Aragorn had a baby, and that baby was also Dwellin, Helm Hammerhand. It's strength 5
true.
burly,
strength 5 burly. Yeah, exactly. So this is the ultimate all your eggs go into one basket legendary legion. That basket is Helm, and if the enemy has a way, it doesn't have any way to deal with him, Helm will
They
kind of
probably
assert,
just lose.
yeah,
Yeah.
will assert dominance over them. The only problem is this is one of these kind of point limited lists because it has Helm and it basically has nobody else but Helm. Once you get to the higher points level, somebody will almost assuredly have some way to deal with him, and he will probably just go down under a barrage of transfixes. And once his will is gone, he will never move again, and the rest of your army will get swallowed whole. But down at the kind of 500, 600 point level, if you're one of those people who are like, I want my army to be this figure, and then a cast of characters who are just here to provide polite applause and screen off his flanks, then boy, is this the list for you, because it's like, yeah, I'll spend my free point of might to make a heroic move. Oh, yeah. And then I'm going to call a free heroic combat. Oh, yeah. And I guess it looks like I need one more point of might to win the fight. So I'll spend one of his points of might, and go on and do it all again.
I rolled a 1 to kill you. It's a shame because I only needed a 2 in most cases.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I understand, Mick, you have some experience fighting against this army.
Yes, I recently fought against that army. I got thrashed by Helm Hammerhand, who in a single turn, whilst fighting against the Witch King and Théoden, outright killed Théoden, and then next turn went and killed Witch King too. There was a King's Huntsman in the army, who it was a Clash by Moonlight sort of scenario, and the Huntsman has shot 0 enemy models. So that was, even though it's the best scenario for the Huntsman, he has not done anything throughout the entire game. But I was still decimated through the combination of throwing spears, fighting ranks, and Helm Hammerhand just smashing my force with his hammer hand.
Yep, hero after hero after hero.
I mean, it's definitely an all eggs in one basket, but that basket is filled with grenades. So
yeah. I mean, I will say this: Helm Hammerhand is, his one weakness is he is fight 5. So
but he has a free heroic strike.
He has a free heroic strike, but if he's using his free heroic strike, he is not using his free heroic combat. So ideally, you want Helm Hammerhand to go in against enemy troops, kill 2 of them, and free heroic combat and kill 2 more, and then rinse and repeat on succeeding turns. While you're probably like your captains of Rohan are going in against the enemy big heroes and just like, I am here to tank you with defense 7 and hope they don't die in 1 turn, and can survive a second turn where Helm Hammerhand is continuing to butcher other people. But that's basically the calculus. Is I think when you play this list, you want either like 1 ordinary or warrior to go in against the enemy's big hero, while Helm goes in against 2 of their warriors who are combats and kills 2 more, so that his big hero is killing 1 of your guys a turn and your big hero is killing 4. That's, I think, the way to plan this out. But if you want to throw him in against Druadan and the Witch King and kill both of them, that also works.
It works.
Yep.
It's happened.
Yeah.
So the question I would have is, obviously Helm is incredible. Helm, or Dwala Gorn Elendamir, because he's also got Boromir's banner in there. So Dwala Gorn Elendamir is amazing. What would you run around him? Would you do more cavalry with the +1 fight around him? Would you do more infantry because of the spears? Would you kind of do a little bit of mix? How do you see people playing this Legion?
Is it the case that you want to ensure that Helm gets to fight for as long as possible? Therefore, you want to have as many troops around him as possible, so that they're not going to just start dying and your force is going to disintegrate. So I would probably play a lot of infantry, sprinkle a few Rohan Royal Guards because of fight value 5, and have a few cavalry models too. But I think it's the case of have a lot of throwing spears, have a lot of troops, ensure your main character is there for as long as possible with as much support as possible, and then yeah, hope the main character is strong enough.
And don't take a king's huntsman is what I'm hearing.
Don't take a king's huntsman. Yeah, I think when I've built lists around this, using this legendary legion, what I've had is I've had Helm and then like 3 or 4 Rohan Royal Guard on horse, and that's kind of the strike force. And then captains of Rohan with, guys, half of which have throwing spears.
Mhm.
And yeah, they're the battle line, and the strike force goes in, crushes one flank, and then Helm heroic combats to the other flank, and then crushes that flank, and kind of keeps going like that.
Yeah.
But I think you want 2 or 3 of the Royal Guard both to get fight 5 and to have something that can kind of teleport with him. Ideally what you want is a situation where somebody leaves like this one figure out on its own, and like Helm and a couple of Royal Guard can jump on it, heroic combat off of that, go off and slaughter other things.
Cool. So I guess we'll be moving into some Rohan army lists. So in this case, initially we were planning to write our own army list, but as it transpired, there was the GBHL final just a week ago, and during the final, in the top 5 lists, there were actually 3 Rohan lists, or rather, the winner was a Lothlorien Rohan alliance.
By the way, it would be the top 10 list, I guess, because it was a good evil tournament. Is that right?
Well, yes, technically, yeah.
So top 5 people.
Yes, so the top 5 people got published their lists, and we are looking at the 1st, 2nd, and 5th place. So I'm gonna share my screen. So let's look from the 5th place first.
Mhm.
Oh, that's actually the 2nd place. Oh, 1 sec. That's the 5th place. Cool. So
nope, that's the 2nd place.
oh, okay. That's the. I'm gonna stop sharing. So let me try this again.
This is why in all of Mick's kindergarten report cards it said does not share well.
Okay, so
he tries. He's just bad at it.
We had also just to mention, this was a good versus evil tournament, and it was 800 points. So the 5th place had, I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce the first name of this person, whether it's Leston Watkin or Yeston Watkin. So I'm sorry if I mispronounced it.
Watkin.
Yeah, Mr. Watkin.
Mr. Watkin.
Yeah, so that was the Riders of Théoden Legendary Legion. So again, this is 800 points.
Mm-hmm.
There was a Théoden with all his gear, 3 Rohan Royal Guards, horses and throwing spears, 2 Riders of Rohan with throwing spears, and 4 Riders of Rohan just with their bows, then a rider with a banner. The 2nd warband was Gamling with a Royal Standard of Rohan, obviously mounted. 2 Rohan Guards with throwing spears, and 2 Riders of Rohan, obviously all mounted. The 3rd warband was Eomer, armored horse and shield, 6 Riders of Rohan, 3 of which have throwing spears. And the final warband was Dernhelm with 4 Riders of Rohan, including 2 throwing spears. So that's 29 models, and most of them had bows. And yeah, it's basically what we were talking about earlier, that you take a bunch of your cool heroes here, and you stack up as many Riders of Rohan, and you shout death, and hopefully that sticks.
Na, 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 na.
Yeah, there are some interesting choices that he made here. One is there is a 2nd banner in the list,
and the Modern War Catapult is a really good one too, but we're not going to talk about that one.
We're not going to talk about that one. Yeah. So there's a 2nd banner in the list, which allows this army to fight in 2 different places instead of being pinned in on Gambling, but is 25 points. So it's another figure and a half. He's gone with 50% throwing spears, which I think is probably the right answer.
Yeah.
For a list like this.
But a lot of them are on Royal Guard. Which you pretty much always take, right?
Yeah, you always want to have them on the Royal Guard. And he's got 5 Royal Guard and the rest riders of Rohan. I've seen people take a heavier loadout on Royal Guard just to get kind of maximize that fight 5. But I don't think I think this is probably fine. Probably in good versus evil, this is fine, right?
I think this is solid generally.
Yeah. I think in good versus evil, I think you need the Royal Guard less because fight 4 is going to be good enough against most of the opponents that you're going to be facing.
On the other hand, though, against evil, you're going to face terror a lot more often.
You're going to face terror a lot more often. That is true.
So there is a trade-off there.
Yep. Although you kind of need, with this list, well, actually, I guess you want to get your charge in.
Because you're going to get Harbinger Terror a lot more often, so the Royal Guard would be useful as well. But I mean, hey, it was clearly actually a successful list, so quibbles, right? Before we go further, can I just ask Nick, how was it decided? What list are you playing? Did you have to play like half with good, half with evil, or did you choose before every game? Or
I believe the rules
because that would make a difference.
It was three games good, 3 games evil.
Okay, so it's not like he played 5 games with Mordor and 1 game with Rohan.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay,
I don't
great.
think
Continue.
so. I would have to double check the rules back, but I don't think so. I think it was more like round 1, 3, and 5 randomized, but I would have to check that.
So let's assume that's what it was, because that makes the most sense.
Yeah. But even if it wasn't, well, on average, you're gonna play half of your games with good, half of your games with evil. So
Well, unless it was like you rolled off and whoever won got to choose which army they brought, and you always brought your evil army. But I feel like that would make no sense. So it's probably half and half.
I mean, I think last time I went to this tournament 2 years ago, that was in Scotland, and I believe I played 4 games with one army, 2 games with the other, but I'm not 100% sure.
Assume that at least half were Rohan did this, at least 50% of the success for the purpose of what we're talking about. So
let's just assume that was the case. Cool. So then I'm gonna try to turn this off and see. Stop sharing the screen. Okay. So let's share list. Wrong one. Let's do this again. Let's share the list, which
Little Mick still has problems.
Okay, second place.
He's trying.
That was the good old.
Still has more work to do.
That was the good old Jay Clare, who you probably have never heard about. He was playing the Paths of the Druadan Legendary Legion, which is the one that we talked about. Matt especially mentioned how this is good at higher points levels. So again, this was 800 points, so this is perfectly acceptable here. So we have Théoden mounted on armored horse with heavy armor and shield, 6 riders of Rohan, 1 rider with a banner. Eomer, armored horse, shield, 3 riders of Rohan, then 2 riders of Rohan with throwing spears, and 1 outrider. And Daorwine, chief of King's Knights, mounted with 5 riders of Rohan, 1 of whom has a throwing spear, 1 Rohan outrider, also mounted, and then the compulsory warbands 4, which is Ganbury Gun, and 15 Woses. So at 800 points, I think this is pretty solid again. I would imagine you would be really benefiting from placing those special waypoints in places where your opponents are going to be trying to get around big chunks of terrain, and you can essentially just run through everything as you wish. So yeah, this is super solid, and Jay is obviously a great player. So
Daorwine instead of Gamling is an interesting choice.
Yes, let's have a look again at Daorwine, because that's a rare one.
Well, so Daorwine is the one that gets free heroic combats if Théoden is fighting.
So
it's a lot of action economy. It's also a very interesting spelling of Survivors of Lake Town, but we'll go with it.
And also Daorwine has a march as well, just like Gamling.
Yeah.
So
Well, he has strike. He's actually really good. So
Yeah,
he has strike and march. But you know,
Yeah.
he doesn't give you a free minded turn.
but he's also
but-
fight 5.
He is
and
fight 5.
Coming's fight 4.
Yeah.
So if you're looking to fight good versus evil, especially, fight 5 beats all of the standard warriors on the other side, whilst fight 4 will often draw.
Yep.
So
But you
that's
got
definitely
to
an advantage.
spend 25 more points to get that banner in there.
As we mentioned, this being a good versus evil tournament makes this Legion even better because you're running into orcs, goblins, or Uruk-hai almost always.
And so all of your
Yes.
models get this bonus.
And maybe
Yeah.
that's why you take there. You have, because of the Woes' tax, you actually have less cavalry on the board, which means there are more gaps to get to Théoden. And with the rerolling ones, Daerwein's very, very killy, so he's going to succeed in his heroic combats more often. And it's just maybe that's the calculation.
Yeah,
Well,
but
and
the,
the
but the
Woes
other
is-
thing is with gambling is that your heroes here have 3 might for Théoden and 3 might for Eomer. So by the
It's a fair
time
point.
by the
Yeah.
time any of them get down to 0, it takes ages to actually start refilling.
Mhm.
Whilst Daerwine can just go in, start killing, and just have fun.
Yeah, that's a good
Well, and you
point.
also have Gonbury Gone to
That
call
doesn't
heroic
benefit.
moves and
Yeah.
stuff for you.
Yeah, and he
So-
doesn't benefit from the banner anyway. I mean, the Woes' tax in this list in good versus evil actually is less of a Woes' tax too, because all of them get the
All of them get a
hatred.
bonus, yeah.
Yeah. So
It's also interesting that both lists took Eomer, because you didn't used to see him as often, but now you see him a
Yeah.
lot more.
Well,
So
again,
I-
he is fight 5, which again is
Mhm.
really good in good versus evil and really
Yes.
mediocre in good versus good.
So I think if you're going to take Eomer in this list, then you're right. I think Daerwine makes sense. Whereas I think if you are going, maybe if you had a slightly lower points level or you just wanted more figures in this, you could take Durnhelm in this list, and then I think gambling makes sense because then she can spend the 1 point off of Mary and get it refilled each turn by gambling.
Yeah, I really like this list, and I like this as a representation of the Legion. Now, obviously, a lot of its success is tied up in 2 things. One, it's Jay Clare, who's an amazing player. And 2, it's a kind of format for it with a high points level in good versus evil. But I think it's a really good kind of showing for how this is kind of the core of the Rohan lists.
Yeah, and at 38 models, it's pretty solid numbers too.
Yeah, no, it is. 38
For
models.
Rohan, yeah.
Well, it's right. I mean, half of it, slightly less than half of it, I guess, is Woes', but still good numbers.
Yep. And I will pull up the winning list very shortly after having accidentally closed it. And now I can't find it.
Anything from sharing correctly.
I am very sad to report that little Mick has still not learned how to share.
There we go. Here it is.
And now loses his homework.
Okay, and 3, 2, 1, go. And here is the winner of the tournament. Congratulations to Rowan May. So this is an alliance list of Lothlorien and Rohan. So we have Galadriel leading 12 Galadriel warriors with spears and shields, 4 guards of the Galadriel court, 4 Wood Elf warriors with bows and Wood Elf spears, 2 Wood Elf warriors with Wood Elf spears, and 2 sentinels. Then from Rohan, we have Grimbold leading 12 Helmingas. All of them have throwing spears, 7 of whom have shields, 5 have bows. Then we have next warband is Rohan Gamling mounted with the Royal Standard of Rohan. Then we have Théodred mounted with shield and throwing spear, leading 3 Rohan Royal Guards mounted with throwing spears. And we have Aldur as the final warband. So that gives us 36 models. He has how many bows here? 9, correct? No, 11 because of 2 Wood Elf Sentinels as well. So that's 6 elven bows and 5 Rohan bows. On top of that, there are pretty much all of the Rohan warriors have throwing spears.
It's 15 throwing spears plus the one on Théodred.
Yes. Plus you have Aldor, who will be calling 3 heroic shots, and Gamling, who's going to be giving Aldor his might points back.
Mhm.
So yeah, this is pretty cool in that Grimbold here again, even though he by himself is just a fight 4 guy with a 200 weapon, he and his Helmingas are actually backed by fight value 5 Galadrim. So you have essentially strength 5 and fight value 5 front line. So it is quite scary, and you have so many shots, and you have Galadriel, who essentially stops big threats whilst at the same time protecting you from bowfire. So again, fight value 5 across the line in good versus evil is especially good because you're not going to be drawing combats, you're just going to be outright winning combats.
The Aldor Gamling combo too, right? Means you're never calling anything that you need to. You can call a lot of the generic heroics off of him and save the might for your heroes. So
that is true. And also, Gamling's banner, is that a 6-inch banner? No,
it isn't. It is not. But arguably, it should be.
It's a 3-inch banner. Oh, it's a shame. It's not a 6-inch banner.
I actually think that with the nerf to what it does, making it a 6-inch banner would have been a good compromise, but maybe next time.
Yeah, but also Gamling gives you free heroic marches essentially by refilling his own might. So you have quite a lot.
Yeah, but you gotta spend all of his might before he gets there.
Yes, so you do a heroic march, then you do a second heroic march, then you refill the might.
Third heroic.
You do a heroic march.
No, he has 3 might.
So you do your 3rd heroic march, and then you do your 3 heroic marches.
Yeah, using Gamling for free heroic marches is kind of it's not really what that benefit is for, just because you have to do it
let me take a look
3 times before you go there. But boy, does this list not want to get Maelstrom of Battle?
Oh, I bet the Gamling Aldor combo is for heroic accuracy because he can call that infinitely, and with that many throwing spears, that's probably pretty good.
So, I bet you're right. Does
Aldor
cool. have heroic accuracy?
Because he doesn't actually call heroic shoots; he just shoots first, right? So he calls heroic accuracy, shoots, and then your whole line shoots better and gets to dismount all those heroes.
All that stuff gets heroic accuracy.
So all those heroes are getting pelted by throwing spears. So.
Yeah, that's right. Through the
ranks. All those elven bows with heroic accuracy shooting through as well.
And then he refills his might because of Gamling.
That's the trick. Yeah,
it's a very cool combo. And at the same time, you have Théodred, who is not your leader again. He can just go into the fight, and whoever he charges, if it's someone scary, then Galadriel's gonna immobilize, hopefully.
Yeah, well, we talked about in the hero episode that for his points, Théodred is remarkably killy. But if he's your leader, he's a bit of a liability. And so you don't have that problem in this list because Galadriel protects him. And even if he does die, it's not your leader. So it's really cool.
Yeah. And at the same time, your leader just sits back and doesn't really care.
Yeah. Kind of interesting that Aldor was not in Gamling's warband for that gimmick, but I guess he wanted the additional 1-drop more than he wanted.
It's just a 1-drop, I think.
Protection from Maelstrom of Battle.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say the evil list looks super solid too.
Yes.
So that's obviously the 50% of the success.
Yeah, but to win the tournament, you imagine that he probably had to win all of his games, or at least 5 out of 6, or whatever the length was. So he had to win something with the Rohan.
No, this is definitely a really good list.
I like the Sentinels as well in there. They're a nice little bit of tech, especially when you're facing evil with low courage. So that's really cool. We actually got a little bit of flack about this in the comments of our last episode because we rightfully were not very pleased with Grimbold. And then, of course, the first thing that happens after that episode is Grimbold and Helmingas win like 2 tournaments in a row.
In a row.
All right.
Yeah. Oh, well. We're not always right.
I don't think we were wrong. I mean, we basically said they have limited uses, and these are the limited uses.
Well, that's the thing. Like this is the limited use where Grimbold becomes incredible. By getting the strength 5 supported by 5/5 and banner rerolls.
And crucially blinding light, right?
Yes.
Crucially, those to bowfire because blinding light protects them even though they're lower
Yeah.
defense. So it's the perfect storm. It's
Yes.
a brilliantly designed list. So big congrats to Rohan on the list design and the way he piloted it for
Yeah.
the first place.
However, we still have to point out that the King's Huntsman still is out there if anyone still wants to prove us wrong.
Yep,
Yes.
that's right.
Yes, we will happily eat actual crow if anybody wins a tournament with King's Huntsmans, and I will regret that. So please cut this out.
All right, guys.
All right, cool. Well, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Season's greetings, or whatever you would like for this upcoming days. Although chances are this episode gets posted after Christmas has
In which
gone
case,
by.
Happy New Year.
In case
Happy New Year. That's right.
Alrighty.
That's right. All right. Well,
Bye,
thanks
everybody.
everybody for being with us.
All right, take care.